Hello, good evening, everybody. Um, so I have started the recording of the video of this session, but I will wait until others appear before I start the session. Hello, Ola Oye, Abdulraz. What's the full name? Abdurazak or Abdurrahman? Good evening. So I have one person online. Allow you. I will just wait for 3 more minutes until it is 4:05 and see if we have someone else join us. And if someone else joins us, then we can start the class. And if nobody joins us, we can still start the class. In the meantime, allow you. I don't remember seeing you online last. And last week we had a brief introduction and discussed that we're going to start our work by studying the first module and discussing it. Hi, good evening. The person who just joined. I don't have your name, I just have your matric number. 16308, like that. So we'll just go till 4:05 start officially. But then my name is Irene Boro, and I'm the facilitator for this course this semester.
Okay, ma. Good evening, ma.
Hi, good evening.
Yeah, my name is Olaoye Abdurazak Shegun.
Okay, yes. Pardon?
I did not. I'm just joining your class for the first time.
Yes.
I just got the notification for today.
I know. That's why I was saying that I am aware that you didn't join us last week. And so last week we had a brief introduction. I explained that I gave people my name. I told everybody what my name is, which is Irene Boro. I'm with the Faculty of Management Sciences, a young lecturer with the Faculty of Management Sciences. And then I mentioned that we will start by treating module 1 this week. So the plan was to try and cover as many units as possible. But I think what we'll just do is we'll cover 3 units today.
Okay.
So the units that we'll cover will be meaning and nature of risk, types of risk, and then risk and business stakeholders. So if you don't have your course material yet, while we're still waiting for 4:05, we have a minute left. Now is the time to download the course material, open it so that we can all be together, move along at the same pace. Simon too has.
Yes, I have it downloaded already.
Okay, awesome. I also mentioned that people might need to reach me and might not be able to reach me on the forum because I'm not always logged onto my learning space. However, you can always reach me via my mail, which I will send via a chat now. So I hope you can hear us clearly, Simon.
Yes. Okay, I go. Owó yẹn tó wọ́n ní oúnjẹ sọ fáwọn èèyàn 1.5 million. Iṣẹ́ wọn ní orí.
Okay, so I'm not sure who is speaking. I think it's Olaoye, and we can hear you. We can hear everything you're saying. So let's just be conscious that for this 1 hour period, it's a classroom environment. So if you need to speak and say something outside of the classroom, just mute your computer or phone or whatever it is you're using, so that you won't distract. All right, so today we're going to be discussing Unit 1, 2, and 3. That's of Module 1, of course, bar 421.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so if you can hear me clearly, just let me know, please. I know that Shegun can hear me clearly. I don't know if Simeon can hear me clearly. And Omo Furiota, hear me clearly.
Hello.
All right.
Yes,
I'm going to mute you now, Shegun, because you are disturbing the class with other conversations. All right, so today we're going to be focusing on Unit 1 and Unit 1, 2, and 3. And as we all remember, the course is risk and insurance. So what do we all understand by risk? As business students, we should know risk. I just want to let you know that if you want to speak to me, if there's something you want to say, and for some reason you're not able to because I have put you on mute, just raise up your hand. There's a sign, there's a button for you on your screen that lets you raise up your hand, and once you raise up your hand, I will see that you have something to say concerning the discussion at hand. So we're looking at risk. We discussed this last week, but actually the 3 of you that are online right now and were not online last week. So we'll just touch on what risk means again briefly. So risk is it's been defined by different people. A layman will tell you that risk is the uncertainty that is associated with an action or with an idea or a business, in fact. So starting up a business as an entrepreneurial student, there's always a risk associated with it. Now, there's a risk that the business itself will not succeed. There's a risk that the product that you want to invest in will not be acceptable or accepted by your target population. So there are just different kinds of risks that are associated with anything that we're doing. In fact, living alone includes risk. The fact that you're walking on the road includes risk. So risk is an everyday, it's something that happens to us in every day, something that is constantly present. But then what makes risk quite unique for us as business people or business-minded people is that you can calculate, you can use statistics, you can use certain tools, you can use past trends, past history, certain what's the word now? Predictions. You can use certain things to predict the kind of risk that you expect. And if you're able to do that successfully, then you can do certain things to hedge yourself against whatever negativity or whatever downfall might come from the risk. So as a business person, for example, you're about to start a new business, you're an entrepreneurial student, you're about to start a new business, and you know that, okay, now, me starting this business, there's a probability, maybe you want to start a business of pure water sales. You know that there's a probability that you might not get the kind of customers that you expect to get, or that competition might just be too much. In a situation like that, you need to have a backup plan. You need to know what to do when certain instances arise that might cause a problem for you. Okay, Shade, that's fine. Fola Shade, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's Nigeria. We're all used to the network problem. So I was saying that if you have anything to say and you're not able to speak, maybe for some reason, you can either send me via chat or you just raise your hand, and then I will be able to just call your name out so that you'll be able to say what you want to say. All right, so from our notes, I'll just pick a few of the definitions of risk that we have. So according to Harrington, risk has a variety of meanings in business and everyday life, which is something that I said already. And it says that there's an uncertainty about what outcome will occur, which is what I said. So you start a business, the business can either succeed or not succeed. It can either fail or not fail. Those are outcomes that can occur from an action that you have taken. Now, there are different natures of risk. You know, you have risk can come in different forms. It can come in different ways. It can come from an occurrence or an outcome. It can happen from, it might be a loss. So, for example, like I said, using the same example of starting a business, you might lose the business completely. You just might not make as much profit as you expect. Risk is not always a bad thing. Risk doesn't necessarily mean failure. Risk doesn't always mean failure. Risk just means that it might not be as you have predicted. So if you have predicted that you will make 1,000 naira, you might end up making 200 naira. Now, that is a risk that you might not make as much as 1,000 naira. So risk is not always a bad thing. I don't know if you can all hear me clearly. If there's anybody who would like to give us a brief understanding or give us a brief statement of what they understand by risk. If you want to, just speak now, and then if otherwise, or if you have any question about Unit 1, just let me know. Otherwise, we'll move to Unit 2. Anybody? Okay, so just to recap then, all right, I can see that Omar Freire is raising his hand or her hand. Okay, please speak. We can hear you now.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please, I need you to just recap on Unit 1 again. I didn't hear much of what you're saying.
Oh, okay. Now, I was just telling us that Unit 1 is just an introduction into the course. Unit 1 just explains what risk is all about. Unit 1 covers risk and then how risk can occur. And I was saying that risk is, straight to the point. Risk simply means the uncertainty of an outcome or of a non-outcome. So basically, risk means it might happen or it might not happen. That's what risk is. Risk is you going into a room not knowing what you're going to meet there. It might be something dangerous, it might be something not dangerous. Now, your note has explained it, but then the point of us having this class is so that I can break it down to as simple as possible. Now, for a business student, risk is simply the uncertainty associated with whatever decision or whatever direction or whatever investment or whatever steps that you take concerning that business. What that means is that if I'm going to start a business of selling, say, jewelries, there's a risk that my suppliers might not send my product on time. There's also a risk that my target group might not like what I have. Uh-oh. I'm so sorry about that. We had
the one that is there.
Pardon?
And which one you have now? Because this is not the link that was sent to the students.
So I'm so sorry about that. I think my network a bit unstable. And so I went while discussing what. I think that you would have a better understanding of risk when we move into unit. So unit 1 just gives you different definitions from different authors about what they consider to be. The most important thing for you is that you ensure that you have a clear understanding based on the examples of the types of risks that we give to you, you know, that or have a practical understanding of it as a business student, which is why I always use examples of starting a business and it not going to expect.
Let him just press.
Bala, I'm just going to put you on mute now because you have some background noises coming up from there, from your office. Please remember, if you have something that you want to say, you can raise up your hand so we can just let you have the floor, or just send us a message. You can send a message by clicking on the chat button, and then you'd be able to send a message. I have put everybody on mute just so that they don't distract what we're saying. All right, so we're moving to unit 2. Unit 2 is, the heading of unit 2 is types of risks. Now, when you have an understanding of the types of risks, it helps you to better understand what it actually means to say that there is a risk to something. Now, there are different types of risks that a business could encounter. The main reason why we're concerned about businesses and risk is because you're all business students. This is for the Faculty of Management Sciences. The main thing here for us is to understand what risk is as associated to business. Now, there are other kinds of risk. You have relationship risks. So I might decide to be friends with someone. There's a risk that that person will hurt me, or there's a risk that that person will do. But then that's not what we're focusing on, because this is a business class. So we're focusing on risks and businesses. Now, with types of risk, you have two major types of risks. When I say major, it means that there are two umbrellas under which other kinds of risks fall under. So you have the external risk and you have the internal risk. Before I continue, let me just put my email address again. As last week, I had put it up for people so that if you need to contact me with any question, or while reading, there's something you think that you would like for us to consider in our next session, then you can always send me a mail before time, and then we would be able to discuss it. This class will also hold every Wednesday, except when told otherwise, every Wednesday by 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Samuel, I'm just going to put you on mute because there's a background noise from you. All right, so we're talking about the types of risk. I said external risk and internal risk. Now, for the external risk, we have the financial risk. Now, there is no business without finance. There is no business without a financial risk. In starting a business, you have to first of all consider the financial aspect of the business. We all know this. You want to start selling dresses, for example. You have to consider, okay, first of all, you need the finances, you need money. Finance can mean money or how you get the money. So in starting a business, there's a financial risk associated with it. There's a probability that you will start the business and then you now have external obligations. You have debts and salaries and stuff that you can't meet up with. That is a financial risk. Now, you might decide to start selling a particular item, for example, and then you have creditors and you get things from them and you sell to people on credit with the hope that those people will pay you back quickly. You can collect the money, take your profit, and then pay off the people who supplied you. Now, when the people who you are supplying to are not paying up as at when due, then you have a problem. So there's a financial risk associated with whatever it is you're doing. There's that risk that you will not get the kind of money or the kind of finances or the kind of output of money that you expect. And that's what we understand, and that's what we call financial risk. You also have systematic risk. Now, there are certain kind of risks that can be, in finance, there are certain kind of risks that can be avoided. They can be predicted and they can be avoided. You know, I mentioned financial risk. Now, you might feel like, okay, now, in case I buy this thing for 50 naira and I plan to sell it for 100 naira and this person doesn't pay me on time, how do I hedge myself against that risk? You might decide, okay, maybe instead of selling one product to get your 100 naira, you might want to sell 2 products. Now, in selling 2 products, one of them might not pay back, but one will pay back. When one of them pays back, you have money to pay your supplier. You have hedged. Or you decide, okay, instead of selling just this product, how about I diversify? How about I sell this, I sell that, I sell this? Now, for systematic risk cannot be avoided. It cannot be hedged against. You can't predict it. Systematic risk is, say, government policies. Even though we also have political risk, but then systematic risk is a change in government or a change in government laws or a change in government rules or a different guideline from the government or from that industry that you have decided to enter that requires you to take certain steps that will cost you. That's a systematic risk. You can't avoid it. You have to take it. You cannot hedge it. In finance, it is believed that, now this is going a bit technical, but in finance, you have a risk curve. And say your risk is, this is the baseline for the amount of risk. Finance believes that there's this gap between my 2 hands is where you have your systematic risk, meaning that you cannot hedge yourself enough to avoid systematic risk. So systematic risk is a risk that you basically cannot hedge yourself against. Now, then there is the speculative risk. Speculative risk simply says that I have speculated, I have predicted that. Now, speculating just means that I'm assuming, I'm calculating based on certain calculations. I'm saying, I'm predicting that certain things might work in certain ways. It becomes a speculative risk because I might say now that if I invest part of my profit in a different kind of business, I might get, more yield from this new business than from the old one. And then at the end of the day, you might not get that. Please, I just want to be sure that everybody is following me, even though I'm just going to unmute you all for a little while and just have, if there's anybody who has. Samuel? Is there anybody who has anything to say?
No.
Okay, all right.
I'm with you.
Just remember, if you have something to say, you can either raise up your hand. There's a raise up your hand on your app, and then you can send a message. All right, I can see people responding now that they are following. So you can send a message or you can raise up your hand. Now let me give you a clear example of the speculative risk as from your course material. Now, when we had the merging of the banks, or even before that or after that. When a bank is about to collapse, not everybody knows about it. Most banks are quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. A number of them, actually, not most, but a number of them are quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And so you can buy shares of certain banks, though now, it's now the holding company, but you can buy shares of these organizations. That is a speculative risk. There's a speculative risk associated with you buying their shares. Now, if I'm buying shares, I'm not buying it because I just want to buy and keep, and I expect, in fact, even if I just want to buy and keep, I expect that the price shouldn't come down. If a situation occurs, an unexpected situation occurs in that organization or bank that then causes the price of that stock or shares to fall, I have been hit by a speculative risk. It means that I have lost out. Now, remember that I said risk doesn't always mean something bad. So the prices might go up. That's another risk. It simply means that my speculative risk has been rewarded by returns. I hope we understand that. Now, there's exchange rate risk. This, I know that a lot of us understand. Since from the time when dollar was 150 naira to now that dollar is 300, and as at the last time I checked, it was 357 naira. I don't know if it has come down or gone up. Just look at the gap. Imagine that you're a business person who imports things or imports even raw materials that you put into your work and get finished goods that you sell. Now, you might have bought things at, say, 357 naira to a dollar. And then while you're doing what you need to do before you now sell, dollar now crashes. Dollar becomes 200 naira to a dollar. But you still need to sell your goods high enough to make profit. Now, you're not the only one in that business. Someone else who is in that business bought goods as at when dollar was still 250 naira. So you bought at 357. The person bought when it was 250 before it even fell to 200. There is a certainty that that person's finished good will be cheaper than yours. That is exchange rate risk. There is a probability of a fluctuation in exchange rates. And you cannot do business. A standard business would always be influenced by the exchange rate. Not necessarily because you are importing. It might just be that the industry that you have found yourself in is highly influenced by the currency value. And so that's another type of risk that one might encounter. And then we now move on to the market risk. Let me just check to see if there's anybody who wants to say anything. Okay, nobody. If you have anything you want to say, you can either send it as a chat. If you look at the bottom side of your screen, you'll find the chat there. And then just to remind you all, because I noticed that a number of people who were not here last week are here today. My name is Irene Boro. I'm a young lecturer with the Faculty of Management Sciences, and I will be facilitating this course for this semester. Okay, so now we're moving to market risk. Now, market risk could be in two different ways. You remember that when I spoke about the exchange rate risk, I mentioned that you're not the only person in an industry, except you're a monopolist. Most times you have other people who are also in that industry. Now, certain goods, the prices of certain goods are driven by the demand or supply of those goods. In cases where, except, the only person who is actually a price maker is a monopolist. All other kinds of markets are price takers. What that means is that the price you sell your goods is determined by the demand, the supply, and the competitors. So if you had plans, based on your production cost, your logistic cost, and then the expected profit, you have budgeted that you would be selling, say, phones, for example, and you have budgeted that, okay, I made this phone for 5 naira, and I plan to sell this phone for 9 naira, so I make a profit of 4 naira. There is a probability, because this is not the only phone in the market, this is not the only brand of phone in the market, there is a probability that someone will come up with a similar phone and would be selling it for 7 naira. Now, you would now have to choose. Do you sell it for 7 naira? Do you sell it for 6 naira? Or do you stick to your 9 naira price and lose a lot of sales? That is a market risk. There is also a risk that your target population might not be interested in the product that you are offering. So you might decide that, okay, I want to make a phone. I want to make a phone that has 4 cameras in front and 3 cameras behind, and then I want the phone to have a small screen. I think that the younger generation would prefer that. So that's your target population. You have created a population and you have said, okay, I think that people from the age of 18 to, say, people to 30 would prefer this type of design. You might then discover that you take it to the market and your target population is not interested. Now, because you only had that target population in mind when making the phone, it simply means that the probability of you being able to sell the phone to a different target group has been really reduced. So you might end up not making the kind of returns that you expect. So that's what market risk is about. It could also be that you thought that people would only require 50. So you made 55. And then there's now a high demand and you have 150 being demanded. That is a market risk. Usually for market risk, you can hedge it by doing a survey. I think I should have mentioned the ways to hedge yourself against certain risk. Systematic risk, I told you, it can't be hedged against. Speculative risk, you simply diversify. You diversify what you're investing your money into. Exchange rate risk, you either diversify or you enter into contracts. You enter into trade contracts. That's swap contracts or exchange rate swap contracts. What that means is that wherever it is you're buying from or selling to, people would have entered into a contract that this is how much, no matter what happens to the exchange rate, this is how much we would exchange our products for. Market risk, to hedge yourself against it, you have to run a market survey. You have to ensure that you carry out enough research before you launch into the market. And then you also have to have a backup plan. For all of this, you have to have a backup plan. Now, and then we have political risk. You remember that I mentioned that one of the kind of risks that fall under systematic risk is the political risk. So now you want to start a business, or maybe you realize that maybe in the former administration, Jonathan's administration, President Jonathan's administration, you discover that a particular kind of good was allowed to be brought from abroad. And you saw that people were making so much profit from it. And so you quickly went, gathered some money, took some loans, involved some friends, and then you invested in that product. And they were to ship it. And then things changed. A new government came in and they brought up a law saying, for this item, we don't want it shipped anymore from so-so dates. And don't forget, the ones you have ordered, you have paid already, and it has not come yet. And then you now end up losing out, because by the date of that deadline, your product still has not arrived. By the time your product is arriving, it's already considered a contraband. Or you decide to go into a particular line of business and the previous government says, oh, if you go into this particular line of business, we'll give you a tax holiday. Or would encourage you, we'll make sure that we stop importation on this product so that only local sellers will be able to make profit. And then you're happy. And a new government comes and says, we have discovered that the idea of saying that only local sellers should do this might push the prices of these particular products, and maybe they're essential commodities. And then you now have a loss. So political policies, political risks are just simply associated with political policies, change in government, change in policies, change in certain fundamental political things that end up affecting your business. Now, remember that I mentioned that there are two major umbrellas under which risk falls under. You have the internal risk and the external risk. We have discussed the external risk. The external risk: financial risk, market risk, political risk, systematic risk, exchange rate risk, and political. I think I mentioned political risk already. Now we're going to the internal risk. The main internal risk that you have, actually you have about two or more. You have more than two. We have the strategic risk. It is expected that as a proper business person, before you start any business, you have a strategy. So your strategy might be, when we start this business, sorry, just give me a minute. I'm just going to mute this and just clear my throat. So sorry about that. My nose was blocked and I needed to clear it so that I'd be able to continue talking to you. Okay, so I was talking about strategic risk. So you might have a strategy. You might decide that, okay, we would go into the market this way. And then you find out that you get into the market the way you have planned and it's shaky. And that particular strategy has either become what's the word now? Has become unstable or has become obsolete. And you find out that you're not making impact as you expect. So strategy is simply your plan. What plan do you have? And you must have a financial strategy, a market strategy, a product strategy, an economic strategy. You would have different kinds of strategies to consider in your business. And then you do that and find out that for some reason, one or two of those strategies are not working the way that you expect. And so you're not actually getting the kind of impact that you thought you would get. That's a strategic risk. From your notes, it talks about location. I might decide now that I want to sell puff puff. And I say, okay, yes, we have the now national headquarters at Jabi. And I think that, okay, let me go and sell this puff puff at Jabi. And my strategy is not because I think the staff there will buy puff puff. No, I think that, okay, if I sell this puff puff, then the students will buy puff puff. And maybe I go and decide to sell it there around exam period. I think, yes, it's exam time in National Open University. I will go to Jabi and sell puff puff. But then nobody takes exams at Jabi. We have various study centers. So day one, I go there in all of my glory, plenty puff ready to sell. And I end up selling maybe 10 because some staff were passing and say, see puff, let's buy. Day two, I say, no. There must be a problem. I go back again. I still do not sell. Now, my location has failed me. And that's a strategy. So the location you decide to put your business in, to set up your business in, is part of your strategy. All right. Then moving on, unsystematic risk. You remember I mentioned that a systematic risk is a risk that you really can't predict or hedge against. In fact, basically, you cannot hedge against a systematic risk. Now, for an unsystematic risk, you can hedge against. An unsystematic risk means that risk, so NEPA just took light, and so this place is a bit dark, but I hope you can all still see me clearly. Maybe I'll just put on my torchlight. So an unsystematic risk is a risk that you can hedge against. Is a risk that is, let's see if this works. Yes. So an unsystematic risk is a risk that is only associated with that particular product or industry. So it's not a risk that you cannot hedge against. It's a risk that only concerns the particular product, industry, or investments that you have decided to go into. That kind of risk can be hedged against by diversifying. So let's not even go into business now. Let's go into investment. You decide that you want to invest in, say, the car industry, the automobile industry. But then to be on the safe side, this torchlight is not working because it's distracting me. I'll just see if just one there is. Okay. So you now decide, okay, instead of just the automobile industry, let me also invest in, say, the jewelry industry. Now, if the people in the automobile industry decide to go on strike, for example, your jewelry industry investment will still be growing while that of the automobile is, affected. So that's why it's called an unsystematic risk. It's not a system risk. It's not associated with everybody. It's just particular. That's what an unsystematic risk means. Liquidity risk. Now, liquidity in business simply means, in a layman's term, cash. Having current assets, that's cash. Having money to do what you need to do when you need to do it. That's liquidity. I mentioned earlier that in running a business, you might be taking certain products from certain suppliers at a credit and then selling to some others at a credit as well, and having issues of balancing. Now, at that point, when you get to that point when you can no longer pay for needs as they arise, financial risk as they arise, then you have encountered, then what that means is that you have been affected by the liquidity risk. The liquidity risk has affected you negatively. It means that you are now, so that there's a risk that you might be unable to pay for things as I went. You might be unable to buy fuel. You might be unable to buy further raw materials to continue with your production. Basically, liquidity risk is just being unable to meet your current obligations as at when due, your financial obligations as at when due. And then you have operational risk. Operational risk is just risk associated with the operations that you carry out. So in the running of your business, your computer might go down. In fact, a clear operational risk for us now is NEPA that just took light while we're having this lecture. So my light, the brightness of this space that I'm using has been dimmed by NEPA taking light. That's an operational risk. I was not expecting it. And so it's affecting me. Unfortunately, I did not prepare enough for a backup. You know, if I had prepared enough for a backup, maybe as soon as that goes off, the standby gen would just come up, or the inverter or something, or maybe I would have done the meeting in a brighter place that would maybe not need as much light. So that's operational risk. Or you're a business person and then someone is trying to pay by card and your POS network is down. Operational risk. Okay. And then we have compliance risk. Please don't forget, if you have any question, just let me know. And then we have compliance risk. Compliance risk is simply associated with your ability to either follow or not follow certain rules or policies or regulations that have been laid down by either the government or the governing body of whatever industry you are in. E.g., you have, okay, when the bank's capital base was raised, some of them had a problem with meeting up with it. It's a form of compliance risk. It simply means that these are rules that you have to adhere to. So there's a risk that you might not be able to meet up with those legal obligations. That's a compliance risk. And then you have a business risk. Now, everything that I have discussed falls under a business risk. It just means that there's an uncertainty of a lot of the outcomes from your activities in running a business. So that's a business risk. I'm just going to give like a few minutes for questions. If anybody has any question, I'm going to unmute you all now. If you have any question, you can either speak or send a chat to the group. Anybody who has a question? And while I'm waiting for anybody who has a question, okay, so there's a lot of noise from different people. I think I'm just going to mute you all back. If anybody has a question, just raise your hand or send it as a chat. Just 1 minute while I mute everybody. I'm not sure where the noise is coming from. Okay, I think everybody has been muted. All right, so any questions, please send a message. Shade is saying, how can one what? I don't, your chat came in incomplete. You might want to resend. So please, if you have any questions, you can send a chat or just raise up your hand and then I will unmute you, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question quickly. We have about 10 minutes to round up. Nobody? Okay, so while we're waiting for Shade to, how can one hedge against the financial risk? Well, there are different ways. Now, the financial risk is quite wide, you know. Even the liquidity risk falls under the financial risk. So the financial risk can come in different ways. Exchange rate risk is also a financial risk. There are different ways. It depends on the kind of risk that you are able to anticipate in your business or your investment. So if it's an investment, you can decide to hedge yourself against it, against the financial risk, by investing, by diversifying your portfolio. Now, a portfolio is simply a gathering of different forms of investments. So you can diversify your portfolio. Say, for example, you want to start a business and maybe what you actually wanted to sell is, oh, fantastic. we're happy with NEPA. They have given us like the system was a bit bright. Okay. So just a minute, please. The financial risk. You can decide to start more than one business, for example, but then there might be interconnected business. So maybe you have decided you want to be a tailor. You want to sew clothes. All you want to do is to sew clothes. You don't want to do any other thing. Now, there's a risk that you might not get the kind of customers that you expect, or you might not get enough money to carry on with buying those clothes because exchange rate has changed and how much you sold the clothes for is now not enough for you to buy some more. You might have to diversify. So maybe the clothes you were sewing before were just, you'd buy the material, maybe you'd buy a material, then you would sew it and you would sell. That's all you wanted to do. But now you might now decide, okay, to hedge myself against the financial risk that might occur, maybe if my products not selling the way that I want them to sell, how about I sell just materials instead of ready-made clothes only? So for financial risk, you must diversify. If you're an entrepreneurial person, for example, you might decide that, okay, if to hedge myself against this financial risk that might occur when I sell my products on credit, you might decide on two things. Either people pay a certain amount before they can go with the item, or you hold on to the item until they have finished paying. And so if someone else comes and pays the full amount, you can now give out the item to that person and refund the money of the other one that paid a little. Or you can decide that I don't want to sell on credit at all. So you have protected yourself from having people not paying you as at when due. So that's just the best way to handle financial risk. Okay? Please, if you have any more questions, just send it down to the mail, to the chat, the side. We have our chat on this side. So we have just about 7 minutes left. I'll just quickly run through. It says, so the next unit is unit 3, and it talks about stakeholders and business risk. Now, what do you understand by stakeholders? Stakeholders just means anybody who has a stake in whatever business that you're running. I think I have another, okay. So anybody that has, oh, you're welcome, Shadi. You're welcome. If you have any further questions, please feel free to either drop it here or send me a mail, and I will try and explain it as much as I'm able to. I don't think we'll be able to cover unit 3 because our time is coming up. And we have so many stakeholders in a business. You have the employees, you have you, the owner of the business, you have the board of directors. In fact, for certain business, the government is a stakeholder. You have shareholders, people who have bought shares in that business. You have the labor union, So you have so many stakeholders. I'm just going to explain what a stakeholder means. The suppliers, the distributors, the industrial customers, the government. You remember I mentioned that even the government is a stakeholder in some business. The regulators, that's those who regulate the activities of that industry. The media, the investors. I think this is a lot, and I don't think we'll be able to cover it fully today, but then I will just explain what a stakeholder means and then leave the remaining 3 or 4 or 2 minutes for questions or a recap. So a stakeholder is someone who simply has an interest in something. If e.g., for this program that we're having now, this meeting, this face-to-face meeting that we're having now, the stakeholders of this meeting are me, the facilitator, you, the students, National Open University's management, Faculty of Management Sciences, the Dean of Faculty of Management Sciences, the HOD of your program, the study center director of your study center, the ICT people involved. So you see the number of people who are involved. It doesn't mean, what that means is that the success or the failure of that activity will affect these people in one way or the other. And so they are stakeholders. A stakeholder is someone who simply has, an invested interest in an activity, a business, or an action. So those are stakeholders. All right, so it's time for us to recap. I mentioned again my name. I mentioned before, I'll mention again, my name is Irene Boro. I'm a young lecturer with the Faculty of Management Sciences. My email address is iboro@noun.edu.ng. You can contact me anytime outside of this meeting time if you have any question or you have something you'd like for us to address in the next class. This class holds every week on Zoom, every week during the semester. So it would stop before exam starts, but it holds every week. Now, from this week, we're a bit slow, and from next week, because exam is starting in October, pen on paper exam, we have just about a month. What that means is that we only have about 4 or 5 more meetings before exam. So what we're going to be doing now is, we'll run through it so that you would have covered almost everything before the exams. For our next meeting, I would like for us to come prepared to discuss which of these risks that we have discussed today can we associate with. Which one can you personally associate with? Which one have you experienced? How did you handle it? And what lesson did you learn as to how to either hedge against it or how to manage it when next it occurs? Okay? This meeting will hold every Wednesday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Anytime outside of the meeting, you can contact me. Please feel free to contact me via mail, iboro@noun.edu.ng. The recordings of this meeting will also be put up on our YouTube address. As soon as it has been uploaded, I will send a link to us on the platform, on the My Learning Space platform. So please take note. What else do you need to know? The forum, My Learning Space, please familiarize yourself with that. There's a little bit more about me there. There's a way there for you to contact me. We can start our discussion forums on that. I'm going to put up a discussion forum after this class, say later in the evening or tomorrow, and then I would like for us to contribute. I would like to see people contribute. Okay, thank you so very much for showing up today. If you know of other people who are supposed to have attended this class who didn't know of it or who didn't join for one reason or the other, please don't forget to remind them. If you know of your classmates who are supposed to have joined who didn't join, for our next meeting, please remind them before time, remind them while we're having the meeting. Thank God for WhatsApp and the rest. Just remind people. When we have plenty of people, it means that we're carrying out people along. What else do I have? If you have any question, like I said, please send a mail. Don't forget to send a mail. My mail is on my phone, so that means that I can always attend to you at every point in time. Thank you so much, Folashade. Thank you so much, Shegun. Thank you so much, everybody who joined the forum today. If you have any trouble accessing the forum, that's My Learning Space, please feel free to send a message to me. If I'm not able to help you, I will be able to link you to someone who can help you. If you have any questions concerning your TMA, please also let me know. Last week, someone complained that the TMA questions were not tallying with the course material. I don't know if that has been resolved. I sent a mail to that effect and I called a few people. If it hasn't been resolved, please let me know. Send me a mail. National Open University really wants to reach out to people. We want to bridge the gap that has been there for so long. And that's why we started this forum, and that's why we've also started, and that's why we also make our mails available to you. So thank you so much. I'll see you next week, Wednesday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. We have extended our time a little bit, but that's all right. It's now all just formalities that we're doing. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining. Please make it a date. Set a reminder on your phone. I realize that helps. Set a reminder on your phone to remind you, say 30 minutes before time, so that whatever you need to do to set up your course material, your internet, your NEPA, whatever you need to do to prepare, you will have 30 minutes to take care of it. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that we can meet again, and I hope that we'll have more people next week. Thank you. God bless. And remember, Irene Boro from Faculty of Management Sciences. Bye-bye.